Greetings, this is Bradford Donald Keller Townsend, and this is a forward research report of critical, crucial, vital importance to humanity. It's from Energy Policy, 64, 2014, pages 141-152, Survey, not sure how they pronounce that. Contents list available at Science Direct, Energy Policy. The journal home there is www.elsevier.com/locate/ENPOL. The title of this peer-reviewed paper is EROI. That acronym is Energy Returned on Energy Invested of Different Fuels and the Implications for Society, by the scientist Charles A.S. Hall, Jessica G. Lambert, Stephen B. Balogh. Excuse me if I mispronounce those names. I don't know the individuals personally and don't know how to pronounce their names. This is from the State University of New York, College of Environmental Science and Forestry, 1 Forestry Drive, Syracuse, New York, United States of America. Highlight bullet points of this paper. For nations examined, the energy return on energy invested for oil and gas has declined during recent decades. Lower energy return on energy investment for oil may be masked by natural gas extracted used in oil production. The energy return on energy investment trend for U.S. coal is ambiguous. The energy return on energy invested for Chinese coal is declining. Renewable energies lack desirable fossil fuel traits, including often higher energy return on energy invested, but create fewer pollutants. Declines in energy return on energy invested of main fuels have a large impact on economies. Article info. Received May 7th, 2013. Accepted 16 May 2013. It's been available online. The keywords are energy, the acronym EROI, all in capitals, and limits, the phrase limits to growth. Abstract. All forms of economic production and exchange involve the use of energy directly and in the transformation of materials. Until recently, cheap and seemingly limitless fossil fuel energy has allowed most of society to ignore the importance of contributions to the economic process from the biophysical world, as well as potential limits to growth. This paper centers on assessing the energy costs of modern-day society and its relationship to GDP. That's gross domestic product. Our most important focus is the characteristics of our major energy sources, including each fuel's energy return on energy investment, EROI. The EROI of our most important fuels is declining, and most renewable and non-renewable energy alternatives have spontaneously lower EROI values than the traditional conventional fossil fuels. At the society level, declining EROI means that an increasing proportion of energy output and economic activity must be diverted to attaining the energy needed to run an economy, leaving less discretionary funds available for non-essential purchases, which often drive growth. The declining EROI of traditional fossil fuel energy sources and the effect of that on the world economy are likely to result in a myriad of consequences, most of which will not be perceived as good. Introduction. 1. Energy has played a crucial role throughout human societies, demographic, economic, and social development. The ability and quality of various energy and materials resources to a society's is linked to the general trend of settlement, growth, and eventual decline experienced by each civilization. The source, White, 1959, Tainter, 1988. A society must have an emergency surplus for their an energy surplus. That was a Freudian slip there. For there to be a division of labor, creation of specialists, and the growth of cities, and substantially greater surplus for there to be widespread wealth, art, culture, and other special amenities. Economic fluctuations tend to result, directly or indirectly, from variations in a society's access to cheap and abundant energy. Tainter, 1988, Cleveland et al., 1984. Today, fossil fuel resources are among the most important global commodities and are essential for the production and distribution of the rest. Fossil fuels supply greater than 75% of the total energy consumed by society. EIA data for various years as discussed in Hall et al. I think they mean the Energy Information Administration. There's also, which is a United States government agency. It's a very good source for information about energy, obviously. Maybe the best in the world, in my biased opinion. The prosperity and stability of modern society is inextricably linked to the production and consumption of energy, especially oil. Odom, 1973, Hall et al., 1986, Hall and Klitgard, 2012, Teverberg, 2012. Economic production, exchange, and growth requires work and consequently a steady and consistent flow of energy to do that work. Longer intervals of sustained economic growth in countries and the world have been punctuated by numerous oscillations, i.e., there are periods of economic expansion but also recession. In general, the growth of real gross domestic product, that means adjusted for inflation, because the monetary system is always expanding the money supply, is highly correlated with rates of oil consumption. Murphy et al., 2011. 4 out of 5 recessions experienced since 1970 can be explained by examining oil price shocks. Hamilton, 2009, and Hall and Grote, 2010. Jones et al., 2004. During periods of recession, oil prices tend to decline, eventually encouraging increased consumption. Alternatively, during periods of expansion, oil prices usually increase, and higher energy consumption and economic expansion are eventually constrained by these higher prices. Jones et al., 2004. Economic growth and stability is dependent on not only the total quantity of energy accessible to society, but also the cost of this energy to different sectors of that society. Jones et al., 2004 article. Oil price shocks and the macroeconomy demonstrates That's a big difference. That means that the entire economy, you're not looking at small sectors or individual enterprises. It's at the other side, at the big side, at the geopolitical nation-state level. Demonstrates a clear relation between oil price and gross domestic product. The main conclusions drawn from this and similar assessments are: 1. Decreases in gross domestic product during the post-World War II period are chiefly attributable to oil price shocks, not government policy. 2. Oil price shocks are the only novel or surprising price movement observed in a 2-year window of time prior to a recession. Oil price shocks lend to costly reallocations of people and industries, as well as fluctuations and pauses in investment. This influences industrial output and subsequently gross domestic product. Jones et al., 2004. 1.1 Cost of energy. The ratio of the monetary cost of energy compared to the GDP generated for the same year gives a quantitative index of how much money is invested in energy on average to generate a unit of growth. This can be calculated by dividing the money required to buy energy by the total gross domestic product. When this ratio is low, typically around 5%, economies grow strongly. Hall and Klitgard, 2012. When this ratio is high, about 10%, and historically up to 14%, recessions tend to occur. A sudden climb followed by a subsequent decline in the proportion of the GDP spent for energy occurred during the two 1970s and mid-2008 oil shocks. Hall and Cleveland, 1981. Hamilton, 2009. Hall and Klitgard, 2012. Rapid increases in the economic cost of energy, e.g., from 5% to 10%, result in the division of funds from what is typically devoted to discretionary spending to the energy acquisition. Hall and Klitgard, 2012. Consequently, large changes in energy prices influence economies strongly. The energy and economic communities currently host strongly polarized views about whether the quality of fossil fuel resources ultimately available to society is declining, and if so, the potential repercussions of this for societal well-being and economic growth. Much of the argument used by the energy community revolves around the concepts of net energy and energy return on investment, EROI. For example, while most energy scientists accept the economist's argument that there is a lot of oil left in the ground and that higher prices will encourage its extraction and production, they also point out that when more money is required, more energy is required too, and that there is a limit to how much we can pay for oil that occurs as one approaches using a barrel of oil to extract another barrel of oil. Such net energy analysis is sometimes called the assessment of energy surplus, energy balance, or as we prefer EROI. 1.2 Types of EROI analysis and associated boundaries. Energy return on energy investment, EROI, is a means of measuring the quality of various fuels by calculating the ratio between the energy delivered by a particular fuel to society and the energy invested in the capture and delivering of this energy. Much of the current EROI analysis literature tends to focus on the net or surplus for a given product, industry, nation, fuel, or resource. For example, recent discussions on the energy break-even point of EROI for corn-based ethanol, i.e., whether the EROI is greater than 1.1 or 1:1 period. The apparently different results from this seemingly straightforward analysis generated some controversy about the utility of EROI, but the variation in these findings is mostly the result of the choice of direct and indirect costs associated with energy production/extraction included with the EROI calculations, i.e., the boundaries of the denominator, which is the extraction cost of this ratio of production is the numerator, extraction is the denominator. The boundaries of the denominator, Hall et al., 2011. The possible boundaries of the various net energy assessments evaluated in this study are illustrated. These and other boundary issues are addressed in Murphy's et al.'s recent paper, Order from Chaos, a preliminary protocol for determining the EROI of fuels. Murphy et al., 2011. We clarify further the boundaries used in the EROI calculations given here into the following categories derived from Hall et al., 2009. Number 1, standard EROI. A standard ERI approach divides the energy output for a project, a region or country, by the sum of the direct, i.e. on-site, and indirect, i.e. off-site energy needed to make products used on the site. Energy used to generate output. It does not include, e.g., the energy associated with supporting labor, financial services, and the like. This EROI calculation is applied to fuel at the point where it leaves the extraction or production facility, wellhead, mine mouth, farm gate, etc. This approach allows for the comparison of different fuels even when the analysts do not agree on the rest of the methodology that should be used. Murphy et al., 2011. Point of use EROI. Point of use EROI is a more comprehensive EROI that includes additionally the cost associated with refining and transporting the fuel. As the boundaries of the analysis are expanded, the energy cost of getting it to that point increases, resulting in a reduced EROI, or a larger denominator in the ratio. 3. Extended EROI. This expanded analysis considers the energy required not only to get, but also to use a unit of energy. In other words, it is the EROI of the energy at the mine mouth required for that energy to be minimally useful to society. For example, to drive a truck. And then fourth is societal. Societal EROI, EROI subscript SOC, which will probably be in diagrams or in mathematical formulae. Societal EROI, energy returned on energy invested, is the overall EROI that might be derived for all of a nation's or society's fuels by. And then here is a diagram. Boundaries of the various EROI analysis, energy loss associated with processing of oil as it is transformed from oil at the wellhead to consumer-ready fuels. Figure from Lambert and Lambert in preparation based on calculations by Hall. So, the most simple EROI is here. That's right around the extraction point. Then you have ERI POU, oil refining and products of refining. That's that little acronym there. Transportation, do you use a pipeline or 18-wheeler trucks or larger vehicles? And then infrastructure. Are you going to include the building of a pipeline or the roads for the trucks to travel on? Are those going to be part of your denominator, which would again reduce your EROI ratio? Oil remaining for the customer ready. Okay. Okay. So I left on point 4 there, and it says society fuels by summoning all gains from fuels and costs of obtaining them to our knowledge. This calculation has yet to be undertaken because it is difficult, if not impossible, to include all the variables necessary to generate all-encompassing societal EROI value. Hall et al., 2009. We develop a preliminary method of deriving EROI subscript SOC at the national level in another paper in this series. So they're saying for now they're going to simplify the EROI to be not encompassing as much, which will make it higher because it'll have a bigger, the denominator will, they're putting less into the denominator, which will make your EROI seem higher. That's what all that was about. We next present the historical and ongoing trends in EROI findings for various energy sources and discuss the potential impact of low EROI fuels on the continuance of a high EROI society. And then point 2 says a meta-analysis. That usually meta means broad, satellite type view of many studies, and let's say there's been 200 studies on a major heart drug. A meta-analysis would be looking at all 200 studies over the last 20 years on a certain heart compound medicine and putting together like a grand composite aggregated study. And above that, philosophically, you have had time to digest everything, and in your prose in that paper, you're supposed to be have better judgment and being more insightful. So meta-analysis is a pretty charged big word. And then of economic energy return on energy investment values. So they're going to try to quantitate things, give numbers to things for various fuel sources. Now this is life and death for billions of people. I know it's long, but for anyone who sticks with me here, you'll find a profound knowledge and insight. You'll be illuminated by the knowledge. The previous knowledge was important, but it's really we're getting into the profound results of their thinking. Our research and that of Dale 2010 summarizes EROI estimates for the thermal energy delivered from various fossil fuels, and also the electric power generated using fossil fuel and various other energy techniques. These initial estimates of general values for contemporary energy return on energy investment provide us with a beginning on which we and others can build as additional and better data become available. We have fairly good confidence in the numbers represented here, in part because various studies tend to give broadly similar results. Values from different regions and different times for the same fuels, however, can give quite different results. Given this, we present these values with considerable humility because there are no government-sponsored programs or much financial support to derive these numbers. They desire more resources, is what he's saying there, to make these studies more in depth and have more people working on them, gathering facts. EROI values for most important fuels, liquid and gaseous petroleum. Now, petroleum technically is both liquid and gas, which is generally methane. And it's not so simple with all of this. Coal, petroleum have each pretty much mine or oil well has its own chemical characteristics. It might have more hydrogen in it, less carbon, more oxygen, more sulfur. So each major mine or fossil fuel extraction area has its own unique chemical properties. They vary quite a bit around the globe. World oil and gas has a mean EROI of about 20 to 1. I'll say that again. World oil and gas has mean, and mean has over 20 Oxford Dictionary meanings, but in this they're using the statistic mean or average. In science, mean usually means the average, and in statistics, average, that's what the study of statistics is, really the study of averages. Energy return on energy invested of about 20 to 1 ratio. N of 36 from 4 publications, figure 2. See Lambert et al. 2012 and Dale 2010 for references. The energy return on energy investment for the production of oil and gas globally by publicly traded companies has declined from 30 to 1. It was at 20 to 1, and now it's down to 30 to 1 in 1995, to about 18 to 1 in 2006. And that was by Ganon et al., 2009. The EROI for discovering oil and gas in the United States has decreased from more than 1,000 to 1 in 1919 to 5 to 1 in the 2010. That is just the discovery of oil. So that means 20% of the oil extracted has already been expended by the discovery process, all that labor going into that, and all the equipment and energy. And for production from about 25 to 1 in the 1970s to approximately 10 to 1 in 2007, 11 years ago. Gifford et al., 2011. So that's a big drop in the production energy return from 25 to 1 to 10 to 1. So we're getting a whole lot less energy out of our efforts. Alternatives to traditional fossil fuels such as tar sands and oil shale, Lambert et al., 2012, deliver a lower EROI, having a mean EROI of only 4 to 1. I say again, tar sands and oil shale, this is a big takeaway from this paper. They estimate in a very constrained view of what the EROI definition is, they're going with a lower one of 4 to 1. The actual EROI of a life cycle would be even lower. It is difficult to establish EROI values for natural gas alone, as data on natural gas are usually aggregated. So they just use the term petroleum, which includes the natural gas and the liquid petroleum. And gas statistics, Mr. Gupta and Mr. Hall, 2011, Mr. Murphy and Hall, 2010. Or they're probably all doctors. The other important fossil fuel, coal, has a relatively high EROI value in some countries. United States and presumably the continent of Australia, and shows no clear trend over time. Coal internationally has a mean EROI about 46 to 1, N of 72 from 17 publications. So that small case N of 72 from 17 publications. To be honest, I don't quite exactly sure what that means. N is usually, if you have a string of data, like 72 numbers of exam scores, N is one of the scores like 70, and then N sub 2 is an 83 score out of 100, and so forth. And then you add up and get an average of exams. N is usually a number that, an example like a physics exam, N is the scores of that particular exam that was given in math and statistics. But this, I'm not sure what they're getting at. See Lambert et al. 2012 for references. So if you need an explanation, go to that link. Figure 2, Cleveland et al. 2000, examine the EROI values for coal production in the United States. They found general decline from about 80 to 1 EROI value during the mid-50s to 30 to 1 in the middle of the 1980s. Coal, however, regained its former high EROI, getting back up to 80 to 1 by 1990. This pattern may reflect an increase in less costly surface mining. The energy content of coal has been decreasing even though the total tonnage has continued to increase. Hall and Klitgard, 2012. This is true for the U.S., where the energy content quality of coal has decreased, while the quantity of coal mined has continued to increase. The maximum energy from United States coal seems to have occurred in 1998. Hall et al. 2009, Murphy and Hall 2010. Meta-analysis of EROI values for nuclear energy success suggests a mean EROI of about 14 to 1, N of 33 from 15 publications. So maybe that's the mean. The average was 14 to 1. Meta-analysis of EROI values for nuclear energy success, a mean EROI of 14 to 1. So that's nuclear. That's today uranium. And that is nuclear fission, splitting of atoms. See Lambert et al. 2013 for references figure 3. Newer analyses need to be made as these values may not adequately reflect current technology or ore grades. Whether to correct the input for its relatively high quality is an unresolved issue, and a quality correction for electricity appears to contribute to the relatively high value given here. Hydraulic power generation systems have the highest mean EROI. Again, hydraulic, that's dams that have turbines that are turned with dynamos to generate electricity. They have 84 to 1. Say again, 84 to 1 EROI. That's very good. Of electric power generation systems. See Lambert et al. 2012 for references figure 3. The EROI of hydropower is extremely variable, although the best sites in the developed world were developed long ago. Hall et al. 1986. We calculate the mean EROI value for ethanol that comes from plants that are turned into sugars and then into fuels from various biomass sources using data from 31 separate publications covering a full range of plant-based ethanol production, e.g. EROI of 0.64 to 1. That is 0.64 to 1. That means more energy is in the denominator than in the numerator, so it is what we call an energy sink. Pimentel and Potzek, 2005. Dr. Pimentel was at Cornell and a prolific writer on energy and ecology. For ethanol produced from cellulose from wood to EROI of 48. For ethanol from molasses in India, von Blutnitz and Curran, 2007. These values result in a mean EROI value of roughly 5 to 1, with an N of 74 from 31 publications. It must be noted, however, that many of the EROI values, 33 of the 74 values, are below a 5 to 1 ratio. See, I'll say an English pronunciation, Lambert et al. 2012 for references. And diesel from biomass is also quite low, 2 to 1 with an N of 28 from 16 publications. See Lambert et al. 2012 for references. The average is skewed in a positive direction by a handful of outliers. 4 ERI figures are above 30 to 1, von Blotnitz and Curran, Wan et al. 2008, and Dale 2010. So this is a real important. I'm going to blow it up some and put it in the center and try to center it here. This chart shows coal on the left, where my cursor is, N for natural, gas, nuclear, hydroelectric here, geothermal, wind, and solar. Okay, coal, this is 25, so it's less than half here. And this is your air. Proper scientific papers will have an air bar. This has a big air bar. So if this is your weighted average, okay, then if one study, let's say, had a lot more data in it than the other, you might want to weight them by the data that they covered versus just making all the studies equal. So there's different ways to calculate the average. Geothermal, wind, and solar. Okay, mean EROI and showing the standard air values for known published assessments of power generation studies. Values derived using known, modern, and historical published EROI and energy analysis assessments, and values published by Dale 2010. See Lambert et al. 2012 for detailed list of references. Note, please see text for discussion, as all these values should not necessarily be taken at face value. So they're saying if this is your field of study or it's really important to you to dig into all the details. Okay, that's the end of part 1. Au revoir.